Hello! This video is going to have some tips for how to practice the 3-octave F major and D major scales. So as I talked about in the 2-octave videos, we want to make sure we're playing the right notes. So make sure you check the key signature. We have 1 flat in F major, a B flat, and everything else is natural. So the fingering that you have in your part, probably the hardest thing is the beginning. We want to make sure our 4 reaches high enough. So your 2, 3, and 4 are all really, really far apart. So make sure it doesn't sound, that sounds like a minor scale. So really make sure you're reaching high for that A on the 4th finger. Now a good way to check to make sure if that A is high enough, you can check it with your open A. Okay, so the next measure, reach for 4. Now reach back for B flat. So it's a kind of a stretch between your 4 and your 1. Okay, let's look at the rest. Right, okay. So there's quite a bit of shifting in the 3-octave scale. When you're practicing the scale, make sure your shifts are reliable, because if I don't get my shift in tune, all the notes after it are not going to be in tune either, and then your ear will lose track of where you even are, and we don't want that. So, I talked a little bit about it in the last video, but what I do and what I tell my students to do is use the first finger as a guide for what position we're in. Our first finger is the best at knowing what 3rd position feels like, what 2nd position feels like. So, let's see. So, our first shift is into 4th position to an A. Now, luckily, we have an A open A right next door, so we can always use that to, while you're practicing, you can use that to check if your A is in tune. Now, we shift from E natural F, we're shifting into 6th position. We're putting our 1 on the G string. So, sorry, 1 on the G note on the A string. So, this G is where your 4th finger usually is in 3rd position, but we're going to put our 1 there. So, shift to A. Now we shift to G. Luckily, G is another note with an open string. So when you're practicing, you can always check to see if that shift was in tune. And then our last shift is our B flat. So that's only a half step away from your A. So it's a teeny tiny little shift. Now reach for the E natural, and then we just scooch our 4th finger up 1 more half step, and then we scooch it back. Now we shift from B flat to A. So we have your 1 is going to land on the F natural. So this is a great exercise that I'm showing you right now to practice this shift. So you practice where your 1 goes. Your 1 goes from B flat to F natural. And the F natural is going to be your anchor note, and it's going to show your 3 where to go, which is A. So practice that shift several times, and multiple days. And once you feel a little more comfortable, you can take out the extra note, but still guide the shift with your 1. So even though you can't hear the shift, my 1 is still driving the ship, showing the rest of my hand where to go. Same thing when we shift to second position. We're going from F natural to C. F, C, E. And then once you're in second position, you don't have to shift anymore. You landed safely back in less stratosphere, scary high things. All right, right, we talked about F major. So F major is, for me at least, the harder scale out of the 2-3 octave scales because, well, you just have to go up higher. For D major, all of my advice about scales, or all my advice about shifts is the same. So we're shifting from first position to, let me make sure I'm using the right fingerings. Yeah, so we shift from F sharp to G in third position. Now don't forget to do a high 4 for your C sharp in third position. Now we shift up to G. Again, you can check that G with your open G. Make sure you're shifting to the right note. Now, same thing with this scale. We play C sharp with our 4th, and we scoot up to D, then back down to C sharp. Now, if you feel like, oh no, my hands are too small to reach that far on 4th finger, they're not. Your hands are big enough. I have teeny tiny hands. You can't tell as well on this video, but I have smaller hands than most of my students, and I can still reach up. So if you can't reach there, be gentle, don't hurt yourself, but just every day, just see how much stretching you can do. Maybe tomorrow you'll do just a little bit farther than the day before. Okay, so apart from the nuts and bolts, some other advice I have for practicing these scales, getting them really in tune. Practice with a drone. So there's a lot of apps you can get from the App Store where you can, the app will just play whatever note you choose. So it'll just, like, if you're, for example, practicing the D major scale, you can have an app that will just hold a D. And so then that's a good way to compare your scale with the D. So if it sounds funky, it might be funky. It's a good reference point. Another thing I recommend, another way I recommend practicing, this will apply more to the etudes, but also for the scales. When I'm encountering any new piece of music, I make sure that I practice finger before bow. So what finger before bow is so you can see my my bow moving and my fingers pressing down the string are two separate events. So, place, 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 place. So what this does is it slows you down enough to really make sure you're playing every single note correctly. And secondly, what was the second thing? Secondly, it prevents you from kind of sliding around to see if it's in tune. So what I hear a lot from students is which, believe it or not, does not count as playing in tune. It sounds all wiggly, and when you practice with wiggly fingers like this, it's harder to learn what actually is in tune because you're spending all your practice time moving around and your fingers don't know what's going on. So yes, practice finger before bow, practice with the drone, and good luck, happy practicing!